Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Proof of Work, the podcast where we break down Bitcoin using analogies from the gym, the classroom, and real life. I'm your host, Jason Skirty, and I'm a middle school health and PE teacher in Illinois. And I somehow went from teaching kids how to run the mile, how to shoot free throws, to explaining why Bitcoin may be the most important invention of our lifetime. How did that happen? Well, great question. Remember how I said I'm using analogies to help teach? It's kind of what I do in my classroom as well. Well, this episode is called Lost and Found. Pun is intended here. And it's called that because I'm going to tell my story about how I nearly lost my life while finding Bitcoin. So stay tuned for that. And in this episode, we're also going to figure out together what Bitcoin actually is. All right, let's go. So to start off, my story. So the first time I heard about Bitcoin, it was back in 2013. Now, I couldn't tell you where. Could have been a YouTube ad. Could have been some guy at the gym talking about it between sets. Could have been on SportsCenter for all I know. All I knew was that it sounded like weird internet money and maybe something people got rich off of or lost everything on. And honestly, I didn't care. I was busy organizing dodgeball tournaments, coaching basketball, seventh grade basketball at the time, and figuring out how to stop eighth graders from calling me bro. That's right, bro. Remember, I teach middle school, so I hear that all day. So when Bitcoin came up again later, in one ear, out the other, I was a teacher, a husband, a dad of 3 young kids, kind of a busy guy. Fast forward to October of 2024, and I'm mindlessly scrolling the internet, probably avoiding grading some health projects, when I see something about Bitcoin. And for some reason, this time it clicked. Just one article, one video, and then another, and another. And before I knew it, I was reading everything I could about Bitcoin. I dove into podcasts like Simply Bitcoin, Discover Crypto, BitLab Academy, BTC Sessions, and the list goes on and on. And about 30 more that basically I had on repeat night and day. And my kids would keep asking, Dad, why are you listening to a Bitcoin? Or Dad's listening to a Bitcoin podcast again. So basically, that's all I was doing and thinking about most of the day. Moving forward, so naturally, I made my first move. I downloaded an exchange app called Cash App. There's all different exchanges. Basically, that means where you can buy crypto, or in other words, the best crypto, which is Bitcoin, separated from all the other cryptos. But anyways, I bought $100 worth of Bitcoin on Cash App just to test it. Not a big deal. I felt kind of cool, like I was part of some secret club. A club that believed money shouldn't be printed like PE excuse notes. If you're a PE teacher, you know, anytime there's a fitness day, kids try to do everything to get out of that, and parents will write them those notes. So if you are a parent, do not write a note to your PE teacher excusing your child from physical education. Sorry for the tangent. But then came Coinbase, Robinhood, Kraken. Like I said, I was opening up more accounts than teenagers trying to get a free trial. You know, teenagers don't have much money and they're always trying to get free things. I know my kids are constantly asking me for money. So I had one exchange on my phone after another, after another, after another. And I was kind of buying at the time. Let's rewind a bit. So we're going to go backwards again. My wife and I had around 30,000 in savings, sitting in a Chase account, earning. You ready for this? Ready? 0.01% interest, which is basically nothing. Like buy a stick of gum every 5 years kind of interest. So really, I wasn't making anything. Um, no money was coming into that bank account. So we moved it to a high yield savings account, and that was paying 4.5%. I felt like a genius. My wife felt like a genius. We felt like we were winning at adulting, which is always a great feeling because most adults have no clue what they are doing. Until I learned what inflation really meant. And I realized 4.5% interest is like trying to run uphill with ankle weights while the ground is crumbling underneath you. So, nearly impossible. And since my wife didn't really check the new account much, I figured I'd make a few strategic reallocations. A couple hundred here, 1,000 there. Next thing I knew, I spent over $20,000 on Bitcoin. Get this, it was without telling my wife. Yeah, if you're a husband out there, you know that's not so good. So, again, uh, it was a secret at the time, and I felt like I was just investing the money. It was in one account making interest. I'm like, yeah, if I make an investment, I can earn even more interest on it. So now we're going to move forward to Thanksgiving of 2024. We're hanging out with her side of the family, casually chatting about all different topics, sports, and suddenly the topic of crypto and Bitcoin came up. And I, being a smooth operator, I say to my brother in law, Jason, great name, I said, yeah, we've got some Bitcoin too. And unfortunately, my wife was sitting there. Again, I said, we have some Bitcoin. That's when I felt it. The stare. You know the one. Wife turns to me and says, in a voice that could slice through stone, we do? Suddenly, I became the turkey, roasted, stuffed, and cooked. But hey, I thought I was going to lose my life. Didn't end up losing my life. We're still married, happy couple living together, and I'm alive to tell the tale. Would I recommend spending 20 grand without your spouse knowing? Absolutely not. Probably one of the dumbest things I've done. Husbands, please don't do what I did. So once the shock wore off and the glare started to soften, um, following Thanksgiving, it I started to orange pill my wife Ashley slowly, gently. And let me just stop for a second. Orange pill basically means that you are all in on Bitcoin. The logo on Bitcoin is orange. That's what Bitcoiners use to say basically that that's all they can invest in or will invest in. That's the best money out there. So that's what orange pilling means. So I was trying to win her over to the good side. It helped that Bitcoin went from, so for my first purchase, it was around 67,000 in October to 90,000 in a couple of months. And just a side note, as of today, July 10th, 2025, it hit an all-time high of 113,000, actually over 113,000. But more than the price, she started to see what I saw. So that Bitcoin is not just an investment, it's a different kind of money than fiat, which is basically to everyone else cash, if you don't know what the term fiat means. It's scarce, not fiat. Bitcoin is scarce, it's decentralized, and it's built on math and truth, not printing presses and empty promises. And by December of 2024, we were both all in. Yes, it was fast, but hey, my wife and I were engaged after knowing each other for only 11 months. So consistency is key, right? Before Bitcoin, I didn't really care about money. Seriously, I had a 401k. I know I have a pension, but I thought the goal of money was very simple. So I just kept it simple. Make more money each month than you spend each month. That was my formula for success. Investing, yeah, too complicated. Retirement planning, that was for later. Inflation, I thought that was just something politicians argued about on TV. But Bitcoin taught me something more powerful. The system is broken and it is not your fault. Prices go up because your dollars go down in value. And nobody teaches this stuff, not in school, not in health class. Get this, not even in PE class. I know that's a shocker for most of you out there. But seriously, I took one econ class throughout the however many years of education I went through, and I have a master's degree as well. So I went to school a long time, and I knew nothing about real world finances and money, which is kind of funny because that's what you use pretty much every single day. When you see those Amazon boxes coming to the doorsteps, it just doesn't get there. Or Amazon's not that nice where they just send it for free. So you need to spend that money, but it loses value. So now here I am, a PE teacher with a podcast, sharing my story and trying to make Bitcoin simple, relatable, and maybe even a little bit funny. Um, but if you don't like my jokes or humor, I'm a little sarcastic. If you don't like it, uh, no offense taken. All right, we're going to go to the second part of this podcast and tackle the big question, the question that everyone's been waiting for. What even is Bitcoin? So here's the simple version. Bitcoin is digital money, kind of like cash for the internet. It is decentralized, meaning that no single person, company, or government controls it, and it runs on a network that anyone can use, but no one can cheat. Now, I know that sounds kind of abstract, so let me give you a PE style analogy. Because again, I said I'm going to make this relatable, hopefully, bring you back to middle school PE. If that was a bad time in your life, sorry for that. I hope not to bring back too bad of memories from your childhood or trauma from that childhood here. So, an analogy here. So, Bitcoin is like the pacer test of money. So remember the FitnessGram pacer test? We will now begin the multi-stage aerobic capacity test designed to yada, yada, yada. So you may have heard that, and that is the test where everyone's lined up, the beep starts, and you run back and forth lap after lap until you can't go anymore. The people who put in the work and keep going the longest get the highest score on the test. So let me back up a second. Let's say that I was telling my PE students, all right, whoever gets the highest amount of laps on the PE test, I will get you or give you $100 gift card to your favorite store or favorite restaurant. So the kids' eyes would widen. If you're a middle school teacher, you would know that. Any type of prizes, not that I would never give out that big of a prize, but any type of prize motivates students. I know learning is supposed to be intrinsic, but unfortunately, a lot of times students are motivated by stuff. So back to the PE analogy, and I just put, or sorry, the FitnessGram analogy, and I just put the prize out there. So more or less, the people who put in the work and keep going the longest get the highest score. You can't fake it. You can't skip ahead. The test doesn't care who you are, only that you put in the effort and that you are making it back and forth. That's how Bitcoin mining works. So Bitcoin doesn't just magically appear. It doesn't just pop out of nowhere. There are only 21 million that will ever be created, and every 10 minutes a new block comes out. And what that means is basically there is a reward given, which is currently just over 3.5 Bitcoin. So that is the reward that these miners get. And it's not like physical mining like you would for gold or digging a hole. It is on the computer and based on energy here. But people people all over the world, so looking at mining, they're running the computers, and it's to solve, like, think of like a hard math problem. It's to solve a math problem. They're doing the laps, as in the pacer, or the real work. The first one to finish gets rewarded, like I said, with that Bitcoin, 3.5 Bitcoin at this moment. So looking at it, whoever in my class did the most laps would get the $100 prize. They would, and everyone watched them do it. So there's what's called a ledger, which is basically like if I wrote down my finances and kept track of everything, the money that came in, the money that came out. A ledger is just keeping track of finances, but or more or less the money. But this is a public ledger, so the analogy on this is all the other kids, after they dropped out, they watched the highest student or the student with the most laps. They watched them. They made sure that that student got to the line and made it back each time. And that was part of that proof of work, and meaning that it is transparent as well. So you can't cheat. So unlike the US dollars, more can just be printed out of thin air. So the government prints money all the time. And we'll talk about that in another episode, but that is called inflation, which I didn't know. And Bitcoin rewards real effort. So, like I said, there's only 21 million of them that will ever be created, unlike dollars, which can be created all the time. Not to get political, which I'm going to try to avoid on this podcast, but looking at the big beautiful bill, we just print it, or we're going to print $3 to $4 trillion in debt. And where do you think that money comes from? It is not free. That means your purchasing power will decrease moving forward. So you're going to see everything get more expensive. And that's really, in a nutshell, where inflation happens from. So finally, back to basically the transparent piece. It's like the ultimate scorekeeper. No one can mess with it. If you're in a basketball game, you can see the score go on the board. It is transparent. Everyone can see what the score is and what team won in the end. And in the end, I guarantee it is going to be Team Bitcoin, not Team Fiat. All right, so why the heck does this all matter to me as a teacher? Again, as a health PE teacher, what does this have to do with anything? You just teach gym, is what most people say. No, it is physical education. But anyways, it matters to me because I teach kids that effort matters, consistency pays off, and that discipline beats shortcuts. So Bitcoin is built on all of these same values. It's not a get quick rich scheme or a Ponzi scheme, as I've heard it called from my coworkers or from one in particular. It is not a Ponzi scheme. It is not easy, but it's honest. It's transparent, like I've said many times, and it forces you to think about the long term, just like living a healthy life or training for a big goal. So if you are training for a marathon, that is not easy work. You have to put in the work daily in order to get the results. Maybe you're trying for a PR or personal record. on that marathon, you definitely need to put in the work, follow the program. Same way it is, Bitcoin is discipline. You need that, and you need to be consistent. So I am here today to take this journey with you all out there. So each episode during this podcast, we'll talk about a different part of Bitcoin, break it down in plain language using analogies again from the gym, the classroom, and the real world. And you do not need to be a coder, a trader, or a tech bro, like my middle schools would say, bro. You just need to be curious and willing to learn. And I feel like all too often we are not willing to learn new things and we don't want to challenge ourselves. We get comfortable in our own ways and in our own life. So hopefully this podcast will help you to, or help challenge you a little bit, to maybe open your mind to looking at, all right, should I buy some Bitcoin? Is that a good investment? Instead of just laughing right away. I guarantee if you dig in, do the work, get those hours and hours, thousands of hours, is what they say, to be orange pilled or to be converted over. It took me much less time, but heck, I have, in the 9 months I have been in Bitcoin, I have probably listened to well over 1,000 hours of Bitcoin podcasts and different information, and it absorbed all the books as well. So until next time, I am your host again, Jason Skirty, and this is Proof of Work. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for stopping by.